everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with a different kind of deck profile. Today, we're taking a look at Dark Magicians, which honestly kind of came at a whim. I picked up a couple of boxes of that latest Duelist pack that has things from the various protagonists, and even though I didn't do any opening video of it, I still had a lot of fun when I pulled a copy of Magician Souls. I thought, what the heck, why not take a look at that? Obviously, this is a huge fan favorite strategy, and honestly, some people unfortunately have kind of an elitist mindset. This may be totally different from what you guys are used to, but I think it's at least a fun, passable way to make a deck off of this theme. And of course, if you have any other secret sauce or something that you want to share, please do so respectfully down below. But of course, this is going to be a let's build as always, so I'll go through and explain my choices and reasoning behind what makes the core of this deck, how to build it from the ground up, so you could see my logic and then play around with it from that point if you want to build off of there. If you just want to see the typical alphabetical profile, that A to Z style, is in the end of the video. You can click the description box down below for a table of contents that I always include to just take yourself to that. But of course, hopefully you enjoy the rest of the video as well. So without further ado, let's build Dark Magicians. The first step in building any deck is to establish the theme and to build a core that supports the theme's goals. And of course, we're eventually going to get to Dark Magician, but we're starting off first with 3 copies of Magician's Rod, which is a level 3 Dark Spellcaster, 1600 attack, 100 defense, and it's basically a normal summon only Elemental Hero Stratos for the theme, allowing you to fetch any spell or trap that specifically lists the card Dark Magician. A quick ruling on that, it has to specifically mention Dark Magician. It can't be a Dark Magician monster, as is listed on something like the Eye of Timaeus, which unfortunately means we can't use that 1-card fusion spell without trying to draw into it. Unfortunately, that will fall by the wayside in this particular strategy, but Magician's Rod is excellent at grabbing pretty much anything else we would like for the theme. Its other ability is if it happens to reside in your graveyard and a spell, trap, or effect is activated by either player, you contribute one of your spellcasters in order to add this card back to your hand, giving you not only a free +1 upon summon, but also giving you the ability to bring it back for a repeated +1 every time it happens to fall. As long as you're getting, for example, a free Dark Magician, you're able to tribute for its cost, which is, of course, as any Dark Magician player knows, very common in this strategy. The next card, which is something that you're often searching with Magician's Rod, is a lone copy of Secrets of Dark Magic. This is something you honestly could play like 2 copies of, but we'll talk a little bit later as to why you only need 1. It's a quick play spell that basically says you can either fusion summon or ritual summon any monster by using Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl as one of the materials. You're realistically using this in order to bring out one of your copies of the Dark Magicians. This is a level 8 Dark Spellcaster fusion monster with 2800 and 2300 attack and defense. Needs either Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl along with any other spellcaster, so you actually could just fuse the 2 of them if you really wanted, but you could go ahead and even take that Magician's Rod and use that for your play as well. Once per turn, if a spell or trap or effect is activated, draw a card, and if it was a spell or trap, you can set it, and if it's a trap or quick play spell, you can activate it that same turn. Then as a bonus ability, if this card happens to be destroyed, you can special summon 1 copy each of Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl from your hand, deck, or graveyard, which means as long as you play a copy of Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl in your deck somewhere and they don't get banished, you're able to go ahead and summon a copy of each when one of these falls. That's why I like playing 2 of this. You realistically need at least the 1, but if you have the second copy, you'll be able to recur Secrets of Dark Magic with one of the later core cards we'll add to the strategy, and that will let you go and summon the second copy off of just the 2 magicians you spawn off of the destruction of the first one. So if your opponent has free removal they throw at it or something, you'll be able to go ahead and fusion summon your second copy so you can keep the momentum going. With Magician's Rod, I also like having 1 copy of Illusion Magic, a quick play spell that says you could tribute a spellcaster monster as cost, like that Magician's Rod, in order to add up to 2 copies of Dark Magician from your deck and or graveyard to your hand. You can only activate 1 per turn, and this thing is so searchable and recurable that you don't need to play more than 1. But oftentimes I find if I get Effect Failure, play this, tribute it off for cost, it's no longer on the field, so things like Effect Failure won't be able to stop it. I now fetch 2 Dark Magicians and search whatever card I wanted to with Magician's Rod. So it works very nicely there for dodging some effects and giving a lot of flexibility, and I think this is a good time to show the Dark Magicians we're playing here, because basically basically you need at least 2 copies because of illusion magic. The third copy is great just so that you don't have to search it. You can just hard draw it, pay it as cost, or do something else. If you want to play something like Allure of Darkness, that becomes a valid strategy as well, because you don't need 3 Dark Magicians in order to win in this deck. You just want access to at least 1, probably at least 2 if you're playing illusion magic as well. That's our main monster. Of course, not too much to say about the Ultimate Wizard, given he's just a vanilla monster, but he will do plenty thanks to cards like Dark Magical Circle. This is a continuous spell that's effectively like Pot of Duality. Upon activation, it lets you look at 3 cards from the top of your deck, so actually better because you don't even have to show your opponent everything. You choose either one Dark Magician or a spell or trap that lists Dark Magician in its text. Again, no Eye of Timaeus type of thing, but most things in this deck are basically fetchable off of this thing. Just take one of those 3 cards, add it to your hand. You do have to show that card to your opponent. Put the other 2 cards on top of your deck in either order. So if you played something like Upstart Goblin, for example, you've stacked your deck in a way that you could fetch whatever card you would like. Also, if this card's on the field and you special or normal Dark Magician, banish one of your opponent's cards. You do have to target it. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn, and it can't activate during the damage step, but in a lot of situations, that doesn't matter too much. All you care about is the fact that now you could go ahead and special your Dark Magician during your opponent's turn with a card like Eternal Soul in order to target one of their cards and get rid of something as a quick effect. So this continuous trap card says every Dark Magician in your monster zone is unaffected by your opponent's effects, and if this card happens to leave the field, it does have a detriment of destroying all your monsters. Doesn't matter if they're Dark Magicians or not, and that's honestly the bane of this card. It's extremely powerful, but it has one heck of a drawback. However, you want to play this because once per turn, you can activate one of these 2 effects, either special summon a Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard, which won't target because it could potentially be from your hand where you can't target, or you can add a Dark Magic Attack or 1,000 Knives from your deck to your hand. You're not playing those in the main here, but if you wanted to side a copy of Dark Magic Attack, that's basically Harpy's Feather Duster, and that could end up being pretty good in this strategy, specifically because of Eternal Soul. Essentially, what you're trying to do in this deck as your key combo is put together Dark Magical Circle with Eternal Soul so that you can fetch some free cards, maybe get into Eternal Soul, use Eternal Soul during your opponent's turn, summon a Dark Magician, banish one of your opponent's cards, and if they happen to kill the Dark Magician, you could just summon it back and then do it all again. Or, let's say you don't want to necessarily wait for your opponent to get rid of your Dark Magician. You could obviously make it part of a play and then go and revive it from there. And to that effect, I like playing a copy of 𝗣𝗏cie, World Chalice Dragon. Now, this card used to be Link Spider in this deck, even though you can't special summon Dark Magician off of Link Spider because it's not a level 4 or lower monster. The downward arrow was relevant back in Master Rule 4 when I first started playing around with this deck. But now that we don't care about Link arrows for all of our fusions, exceeds, and synchros, we don't need Link Spider to point down. In fact, 𝗣𝗏cie pointing up means he can destroy a monster, very similar to Ally of Justice 𝗍𝗏𝗃 from back in the day. But realistically, you want this because it's just a dragon that you can summon off of one normal monster like Dark Magician. What you're able to do now is, let's say you have Eternal Soul face up, you turn Dark Magician you control from last turn into 𝗣𝗏cie, and then Eternal Soul back your Dark Magician. Well, now you're able to go and play your Secrets of Dark Magic, which will let you go and fuse Dark Magician with a dragon into legitimately fusion summoning Dark Magician the Dragon Knight. This thing's got 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense, needs Dark Magician and a dragon, like I mentioned, and it says its name becomes Dark Magician while on the field or in the graveyard. Also, your opponent cannot target your spells and traps with card effects, and they cannot destroy your spell and traps by card effects. So what this creates is this nice little combo where Eternal Soul is protecting your Dark Magician, as he's now called. He now protects the Eternal Soul so you can't have your board wiped, and if for some reason he happens to die despite his 3,000 attack, you can revive him as Dark Magician, and all the while, if you summon him from anywhere, you're triggering your Dark Magical Circle to continue banishing your opponent's cards one at a time. So this deck is very much a one-for-one wear down your opponent strategy, but it works quite well because of how good it is at getting that recursive +1 and the -1 to your opponent every single turn. So that's why we play the 𝗣𝗏cie. Adds a lot more to the strategy than Link Spider ever did. Just a couple more Link monsters to kind of round out our Magician core here. We're playing one copy of 𝗍𝗏𝗃, 𝗏𝗃𝗃, which we'll be playing with Effect Veiler as our tuner monster. That'll show up later in the profile, but for now you just have to know if you summon Effect Veiler, combine it with any monster, even a Dark Magician, you can summon 𝗃𝗃𝗃, bring out another Effect Veiler from the deck. That lets you go for this Link 3, Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians, who basically has two very useful effects for this strategy. Only has 1850 attack, so not that powerful, but if she's Link summoned, you count the number of spells on both sides of the field and in the graveyard, and you're able to go and add a spell counter onto this card. She has a protection effect if they're Endymion cards, but we're not running those, so we'll skip to the final effect, which says, as a quick effect during either player's main phase, you can get rid of 3 spell counters from your field to special summon any spellcaster from your hand or graveyard in defense position to one of the 3 zones that she points to. And effectively, that means you have a monster in your extra deck that functions just like Eternal Soul, triggering your Dark Magical Circle and such, not necessarily protecting the Dark Magician, but on the other hand, not having the weakness of dragging your Dark Magician and the rest of your board along with it should it fall. So this adds a lot of consistency to the strategy just by having another way to bring back our Dark Magician, and it uses our extra deck of all things. The next half of the core, as I like to think of it, is basically what adds a lot of consistency to the main action part that we saw in the previous segment. First, we're playing 3 copies of an optional Magician's Souls, and I'll talk a little bit about why I like playing this card, but why, if you can't afford $300 worth of one card, you just go and play Apprentice Illusion Magician instead. So first, looking at Souls, it's a dark level 1 spellcaster with 0 attack and defense, and it has 2 very important effects that you want to capitalize on. First is that if you happen to control it from being normal summoned or special summoned with its own effect, you can send up to 2 spell or traps from your hand or field to the graveyard as cost to draw that many cards. That effect, as awesome as it is kind of like a pseudo Pot of Greed, draw filtering, Allure of Darkness type card, ends up getting Ash Blossomed way too much, unfortunately, and then your opponent comes out ahead if you actually got rid of 2 cards. So oftentimes I find myself either not using that effect or getting rid of 1 card, like an extra copy of Dark Magical Circle or Eternal Soul, which I honestly play 3 copies of each so I can draw into them instead of having to search them all the time. But I digress here. It's not the best just for its draw effect. You do, much like in Spirals and in Combo Eldritch and such, play this because you can reveal it from your hand in order to special summon this card or a Dark Magician from your graveyard by sending to the graveyard a level 6 or higher spellcaster monster from your deck as cost. That's really good because it means you reveal this, send Dark Magician to the grave, special summon this, and then if you want the free draws, you could do that. And it also lets us have access to Dark Magician Girl as another card we can send to the graveyard. I already mentioned how you're able to summon this card off of the Dark Magicians, just giving you a free plus helping it so you don't lose your 1 monster for nothing. You get 2 monsters back as a bonus instead. But in addition to that, we're going to be talking about Soul Servant here. So this is something that cements my purpose in playing Magician's Souls. So a little more on that to continue, but Soul Servant basically is a quick play spell that says stack the top of your deck with any Dark Magician or Dark Magician listing card from your hand, deck, or graveyard, and then you can banish it from your main phase in order to draw a number of cards equal to the different Palladiums, Dark Magicians, and or Dark Magician Girl cards you have on the field and in the graveyard. So what does that all mean? You're often using Magician Souls to yard Dark Magician Girl. You have access to Dark Magician in a plethora of ways, and if you're able to establish that, Soul Servant is a quick play spell version of Sky Striker Mobilizing Gauge by letting you search a card, putting it on top of your deck, and drawing 2, which effectively draws you that searched card and then 1 more card on top of it. So 3 copies of Sky Striker Mobilizing Gauge, yes please, and it all becomes possible because Magician Souls is able to yard Dark Magician Girl. Now, what if you can't afford Magician Souls? Well, don't worry, Soul Servant is still powerful. You're able to still access the Dark Magician and get your 1 search off of this thing. It's also able to recur things from your graveyard, which is why we've been playing 1 copy of a lot of things like Illusion Magic and Secrets of Dark Magic because it becomes copies 2, 3, and 4. But if you don't want to play or can't play the Magician Souls, you can very easily play Apprentice Illusion Magician, which is a level 6 Dark Spellcaster, same attack and defense as Dark Magician Girl at 2,000 and 1,700 defense. Basically, discard a card from your hand to the grave to special summon her. Could make some plays live, or you could just recur things with Soul Servant anyway. From there, you're able to add a Dark Magician from your deck to your hand, giving you access to Dark Magician that you would potentially with Magician Souls. There is a slight difference in that Souls immediately yards a Dark Magician, which makes it live and accessible to other cards, whereas the Apprentice Illusion Magician adds the card to your hand, which may not be useful unless you get access to your Eternal Eternal Soul being live, but nonetheless, you're still able to go ahead and access your Dark Magician, put a Spellcaster monster on board at the same time, which means Secrets of Dark Magic becomes live as a fusion spell, and of course, she has her extra unique ability of serving as a hand or field trap, kind of like Ghost Ogre, where you can send her to the graveyard to attack pump one of your Dark Spellcasters by 2,000 attack, which is pretty nice, something you can't do with Souls. But overall, I do like Souls because you could special it in order to get it out onto the board for free. It yards Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, which ties the Soul Servant package together, and you're even able to normal summon if you have to. For example, let's say if you were special summon locked. So realize what role these cards play. Apprentice Magician is pretty good, but not if you're playing Pot of Duality. It's honestly fine when you have access to Magician Souls. You're able to pitch copies of this anyway, or if you activate Duality and can't special summon, you can just normal summon Magician Souls because that's a level 1. Can't do anything like that with Apprentice Illusion, of course, because she's a level 6. You can't special her because of Duality, and you're not able to access Dark Magician at that point, but Duality helps you double down on the Dark Magical Circle's search power, allowing you to excavate 3 cards from the top of your deck, add one of them to your hand, and then shuffle the rest back. You, of course, cannot special summon that turn and cannot use another Pot of Duality that turn, and you also cannot play Duality if you've already special summoned. People who aren't familiar with the card may ask, but it does work that way, unfortunately, where it is going to lock you out for the whole turn before and after. And effectively what this card does is it makes it so you're able to access your Magician Souls, your Soul Servant, your Magician's Rod, your Eternal Soul, Dark Magical Circle, all these cards we talked about that are so central to our strategy we're maxing out on by playing 3 copies of, this thing lets you get. And again, if you happen to draw this along with Magician Souls, you could either go ahead and just normal summon the Magician Souls, or you can even discard Duality as one of the cards that you use for Magician Souls cost in order to draw yet another card off of it. So lots of flexibility available with this card, and I like the fact that it lets us make a lot of good use out of the tech and side deck choices we play in the rest of the deck. From there, I like playing 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, which basically just lets us send a spell or trap from the deck to grave, hard once per turn, to send a copy of Metal Foes Fusion to the graveyard, who lets us recycle this card into the main deck in order to draw 1 card. This, of course, does reset what cards we've put on top of our deck with Dark Magical Circle, so it's not quite Upstart Goblin in being able to stack, but you're able to turn it into a free 1-card filter just like Upstart Goblin, and you could sometimes turn it into even more, because if you happen to draw Metal Foes Fusion, normally it's bad in your deck, but if you have it with Magician Souls, just send it to the grave to draw 1 card, recycle the fusion to draw 1 more card, turning it into a nice little plus. So this is a nice package specifically because it lets us play our Dark Magic Inheritance. It's a quick play spell that lets you banish 2 spells from your graveyard in order to add a spell or trap with Dark Magician listed in its card text, so effectively a quick play spell version of Magician's Rod. Do you have to play this thing? Not necessarily, but it does give a lot of bonus flexibility in getting your combo pieces, especially if you've already used your normal summon, need the bonus search effect, because of course that's always nice, and Foolish Burial Goods allows you to easily make use of this card even in the first turn. We're going to shift gears real quick and go more into fleshing out the main deck and the extra deck to basically finish things off. So from this point on, these are things that I'm playing as tech that you could obviously swap out and make it into your own style. I don't think these are necessarily core to the strategy, other than maybe this 1 card. Magician Navigation is a trap card that has 2 very unique abilities depending on where you play it from. So from the field, you can activate it as just a regular trap card to special summon Dark Magician from your hand, and then another level 7 or lower Dark Spellcaster type from your deck. So it could be Dark Magician again, could be Dark Magician Girl. Obviously the first summon of Dark Magician from your hand means you can activate the effect of Dark Magical Circle, which is nice. You could do a lot of things with this card. It even lets you go and activate your Soul Servant for the free Sky Striker effect if you were able to summon out a Dark Magician Girl with this card. The other ability, and the reason I like playing this thing at 1, is because you can banish it from the graveyard in a turn that you did not send it to the graveyard, and as long as you control Dark Magician, which is of course the goal of this strategy, to target one of your opponent's face-up spell and trap cards and negate its effects until the end of the turn. That does include normal spells and other things that they may be activating. You could basically just negate it, and in order to activate this, you just have to have access to it in the graveyard, which you could very easily do with a card like the Foolish Burial Goods we just talked about at the end of the last section. So 1 copy of this I think is honestly fine. It's searchable for the first effect antics, and you realistically don't really need more than 1 copy of it because you're able to access it so easily with your 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. From there, I do like to play 3 copies of the Effect Veiler I mentioned. This card is great as a hand trap, but as a level 1 Spellcaster tuner, it just has so much synergy. You can turn it into Needle Fiber. You can make a level 8 Synchro Play. You can use use it as a spellcaster monster to go into Selene off of your 𝗣𝗵𝗵𝗲. Lots of good things to say about this card, so I personally just love this card at 3 and probably won't change that for any time in the near future. Next up, we have 3 copies of Enemy Controller. This is a flex spot. Basically, I'm trying to put in something versatile that can be drawn off of the Dark Magicians in order to further disrupt the opponent, because of course you can activate your traps or quick play spells that you draw and set off of that card in the same turn that it was set. Enemy Controller has 2 abilities. Of course, you could change the battle position of a face-up monster your opponent controls, or you could tribute one monster to target one of their cards and steal that monster until the end phase, which is extremely good in this deck because you're getting Dark Magician for free every single turn. So not only are you recouping the loss with Eternal Soul, but you could potentially even gain an extra use out of Eternal Soul by sending your Dark Magician that's already there to the graveyard, steal an opponent's monster, and then you can bring Dark Magician right back to amass a big board with a lot of attack points to just end the game as quickly as possible. So probably 2 to 3 copies of this card as just a flex spot. I consider things like Compulsory Evacuation Device and stuff, but I just love the flexibility of a quick play spell that is JDGaming, so we went for that. And then we have 3 copies of Solemn Strike. I was originally playing Solemn Judgment with the logic of it can stop cards potentially that would destroy my Eternal Soul, but a lot of times people are going for Nightmare Phoenix or some other Link monster that's able to take care of my cards, and Solemn Strike costs only 1500 life points to negate that effect or the summon. It also has the flexibility of stopping my opponent's hand traps and such, so Magician's Souls is more likely to go off. All around, this card's so good. If I could play like 5 copies of it, I probably would, because it's just such a powerful card in making sure your plays stick. This is effectively a more aggressive version of Called by the Grave in this particular strategy. Finally, for the last 2 slots, I like playing Skill Drain because this is just an unfair auto win button that says your opponent's probably going to lose while you keep picking off their cards by summoning Dark Magician, and then Monster Reborn because it lets you summon Dark Magician or combo off in much the same way that Enemy Controller would, just recycling one of your opponent's fallen monsters. So that's basically the main deck of 40 cards. Now we're going through the extra deck very briefly, starting with the level 8 Synchro monsters. We have a Borreload Savage Dragon, which you can bring off by summoning an Effect Failure, tuning it with your Dark Magician, and if you've gone for, let's say, an Imduk or a 𝗣𝗵𝗵𝗲 earlier in the game, or maybe even that turn, equip it onto the Savage Dragon, give it some attack points, and then 1 or 2 turns of Omni Negation of one of your opponent's cards, which is pretty good. Then we have Draco Berserker of the 𝗍. This is a card I featured in Psychics a lot, but same kind of deal here. You don't have to put a ton of monsters into making a Borrelsword Dragon as a Link monster if you can just throw down an Effect Failure with your free Dark Magician into this level 8 Synchro. It's got 3000 attack, has an ability that banishes an opponent's monster if they activate its effect outside of the damage step, and then if it happens to kill an effect monster by battle, you can go ahead and gain that monster's attack and then attack another monster, which helps you do a ton of damage. So basically, this is just an economical way of bringing out a game-ending card, kind of like Borrelsword Dragon, and I think if you can make level 8 Synchro monsters more easily than Borrelsword as a Link 4, this card is definitely worth taking a look at. Psyframe Lord Omega is just a generically good level 8 monster that you're able to summon off of Dark Magician and Effect Failure, and it even has a nice recursion effect that lets you take your banished cards from Magical Inheritance or your Navigation back into your graveyard, and if this card ever falls or you use it as material or something, you could go ahead and just shuffle a card into the deck along with itself back to your extra in order to potentially summon it again. So it's in there as a flex spot, but feel free to play around with it if you'd like. And then the last level 8 Synchro monster is Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend, who's able to wipe potentially your opponent's entire board of special summon monsters as long as everything is destroyable and has less than or equal to 3000 attack. The burn damage you do off this card for each one is of course a nice bonus as well. So those are some utility monsters. Basically, you can get so much use out of the Effect Failure, and that's what I decided to go with here. We have just one Xyz monster. You could probably play some others, but right now I'm just playing Big Eye. It's able to steal your opponent's monster, still attack with that monster, or use its effects, which is absolutely crazy. Unrestricted other than this card can't attack, so no reason not to play it. You can easily amass 2 Dark Magicians. These final 4 slots I've dedicated to Link monsters, and honestly, these are flex spots as well, but I just felt really comfortable playing them because I found they ended up being staples in a lot of my decks as of late. We're starting off with IP Masquerena as a Link 2 that you can bring off of free Dark Magicians, Magician's Souls, or Magician's Rod as just non-Link monsters. Very easy to bring out, has a quick Link effect to summon something during your opponent's turn, which is nice, and of course makes the monster you summon indestructible by your opponent's card effects, so very flexible, useful card all around, especially when you combine it with something like Nightmare Unicorn, which is now able to get rid of one of your opponent's cards, shuffling it into the deck at the cost of a discard, all during your opponent's turn thanks to Masquerena, or you could summon something as easy to play as Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax, which just needs 2 monsters special summoned from the extra deck. This thing is just a monster. I've talked about how my brother always loves playing this card. It's just such a scary card. Upon being link summoned, it can't be targeted by anything from that point on as long as it doesn't leave the field. It's a lightning rod for all your opponent's attacks so that they have to attack it. Anything that it battles that was special summoned, it's going to absorb the attack of, so it's always doing 3,000 damage. And if your opponent somehow gets rid of it and it falls into the graveyard, you're able to shuffle a card back without even targeting. So all very useful attributes. Is it the end all be all for the game? Not necessarily. Honestly, I think it's very underappreciated. But if you're able to bring this thing out, sometimes your opponent just straight up loses because they can't get rid of this thing. It's basically the modern 𝗣𝗿𝗲𝗲 of the Diabolic Dragons, if you remember that card from back in the day. And then the last link monster I'm playing is basically my answer to that 𝗣𝗲𝗲𝗄 is 𝗤𝗏𝗄 Dragon, which is able to steal your opponent's cards, non-targeting, non-destruction removal effect. He himself is protected from targeting by monster effects, and you're able to go and even reduce the attack of a monster permanently by 500 points as a quick effect that also ends chains by preventing your opponent from responding to this card's effect. So very powerful all-around flex card that I like playing here, but of course you can always play anything in those last 4 slots depending on what you feel you need against your local metagame. And with all that, it's time to conclude our journey with the arrival of the alphabetical deck list. Special thanks to everyone who watched the whole thing. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of the deck from the ground up to where it is now, and even if you didn't, feel free to leave your comments down below, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll start off with the main deck here, 40 cards starting with triple Dark Magician, 1 copy of his apprentice Dark Magician Girl, triple Effect Veiler, triple Magician's Rod, and triple Magician's Souls, and then we're swiftly on to Dark Magical Inheritance for our spells. We have triple Dark Magical Circle, triple JDGaming, double Foolish Burial, 1 Illusion Magic, Metal Foes Fusion, and Monster Reborn, triple Pot of Duality, 1 Secrets of Dark Magic, triple Soul Servant, and then off to traps we are at triple Eternal Soul, 1 Magician Navigation, the Limited Skill Drain, and triple Solemn Strike, again for a 40-card main deck. Then for our extra deck, starting with our fusion monsters, we have a Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, double the Dark Magicians. For synchro monsters, we have Borreload Savage Dragon, Draco Berserker of the 𝗍𝗔, Psyframe Lord Omega, and Scarlight Red Dragon Archfiend as our level 8 synchro monsters. For our Xyz, we have the lone rank 7 in number 11 Big Eye, and then for link monsters, we have Imduk the World Chalice Dragon at link 1. Link 2, we have Crystron Halqifibrax or Needle Fiber with IP Masquerena. For link 3, we have Nightmare Unicorn and Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians. And for link 4, we have Borreload Dragon and Mech Knight Crusadia 𝗣𝗲𝗄𝗄 for, of course, a 15-card extra deck. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.